Let's get into it. Sold Not For Sale. Coach Colin here. You guys already know we got a clip for you, a Joe Rogan clip, and it is about the most logical thing Americans could have done was vote for Trump. They're going to be going into that a little bit, and then they're also going to be touching on the fact of, if I had to break it down simply, the working class people of the world understand where the world needs to go and where it is currently going better than any politician does. I completely agree with that, but that's going to be in the Joe Rogan clip. Then we're going to hear Trump and Speaker of the House Mike Johnson talk about immigration and what they plan to do to fight the alleged plan that the Democrats have to bring in more voters. Then Trump is confronted by a reporter on things like Ukraine, pro-life, pro-choice, and something called FISA. And I'm going to pose a question to you where I'm going to ask you, do you think President Trump can trust Speaker of the House Mike Johnson? And then we got Benny Johnson talking about Chick-fil-A, Trump's appearance at Chick-fil-A, and I'm going to show you a little bit about that as well. He's interviewing someone from the black community, and he's just talking about why blacks are embracing Trump the way they are. Let's get right into it. Don't forget about the channel that I have. I break away from the Rogan content. It's Coach Colin Media. We got 27 videos up right now. Hit that subscribe button. We're uploading every day on there and on this channel as well. Let's get into it. The first video I'm going to show you, of course, is going to be Joe Rogan. Let's go.
They're the source of your problems. It's these other people with less melanin or more melanin, or they're from here or they're from there. Let more people in through the border. Give them all money. Don't give them any money to the poor Americans, but give a shitload of them to the immigrants. Bring them in. Like all of that. If I was an intelligent species, I would say this is the best way to wreck this whole thing. So they need us to run it. Just let it go wild as possible. Have no adults in the room. No rash. You're getting 16-year-olds to go talk to presidents about what they should do with their oil.
But you know, it's like. But what's good about the time we live in is that people are pushing back against it.
Yes.
So whether it's whoever's doing this to us, people are pushing back against it. And if you look at, one of the things that happens in the UK all the time is amongst the kind of chattering classes and the commentariat, they will often say, how on earth did Donald Trump get elected? They said it in 2016. They especially said it in 2017 when he was inaugurated. The screaming woman meme. That was expressed across these kind of informed circles. And I often say to them, look, the election of Donald Trump is the most logical thing that has happened in American politics in decades. It makes perfect sense to me that people would elect someone like him, even though I have many disagreements with him. And, people will say, but I often make the point that working people in America wanted to send a message to the establishment. They wanted to send a message to the establishment about how they've handled the economy, about their cultural contempt for ordinary Americans, for working Americans. I think it's really important for working class people to understand how much this new elite hates them. It really hates them with a visceral passion. And we see it in the United Kingdom and we see it in the United States. In the United States, you have the Hillary Clinton basket of deplorables view of these people, or Biden referring to them as semi-fascists, or even going back to Barack Obama, who was probably more sensible than those two, saying these people cling to their Bibles and their guns and they're scared of foreigners. In the UK, it expresses itself with the description of these people as gammon. They're referred to working class people who vote for Brexit.
What is gammon?
Gammon is a reference to their red faces, lower class, middle-aged men, red in the face. They're called gammon. Gammon is pig meat, right? And it brings to mind what Edmund Burke said about the democratic multitude in the 1700s, and he referred to them as the swinish multitude. That image of the pig-like masses has come back. It's so important, I think, for working class people to know that this new establishment hates them with a passion. And that's why the working class revolts against this establishment that have taken place over the past decade or so, the election of Trump, the vote for Brexit, the vote for various populist parties in Europe, is such an important turning point, because this is ordinary people staking their claim to a voice in public life and saying we matter, our economic needs matter, our cultural values matter, our community matters, our families matter. That's what these people are saying. And so when people say, Donald Trump is a blunt instrument, he's an unwieldy cudgel for these people to use against the establishment, absolutely right. But what other instrument did they have? What other weapon did they have?
Right.
You know, that trade unions have been decimated. Communities have been decimated by the ceaseless march of neoliberal values and state intervention. The left has utterly abandoned working class people and has made itself an instrument of the bourgeoisie, you know, the identitarian graduate set. That's what the left now means. So the working classes have been left utterly denuded of any other political mechanism through which to make their voices heard. So the fact that they said, okay, we'll give Trump a punt, makes perfect sense to me. It's absolutely logical. There is no problem with that at all. So I think, one of the positive things of our time is that whoever is doing all this crazy stuff to us, whether it's the robots or society itself, I think it's society itself. The good thing is people are pushing back. They're saying enough is enough. We don't want any more of this crap shoved down our throats, and we are going to rebel, even if it's in a way that you disapprove of.
And this is something that's important for people to understand. Historically, that has always been the case. There's always been narratives, and there's always been people that push against those narratives, and there's always been a conflict. This idea that we're ever going to exist in a society, particularly one today, where I think it's greatly accentuated by the access to social media, because the ability to complain and people that are addicted to complaining, they're doing it all day long and arguing all day long. There's never been a time where people were completely at peace. Yeah. Ideologically ever. These are ridiculous notions that people keep in their head. They reminisce in a very false way, and it's just not the case. As someone who grew up during the Vietnam War when that was happening, the country was very divided. The country was extremely divided. You know, I was living on the West Coast, and there was a lot of confusion in this country because it was an unjust war that made no sense, and people were being forced to go over there and fight. Yeah. It was a crazy time of division. And when the Vietnam War ended, it kind of like cooled off for a little bit. And then in the 80s, we started getting terrified of getting bombed. Yeah. That was during the 80s. That was the big fear that came upon us. So it's like I've seen these things before. They always exist. It's just right now it's hyper-fed by social media, hyper-fed, where it's just it's a wildfire that I don't know if we're going to be able to put out.
But I think what's interesting about today is that it's like there are two culture wars going on. So there's the social media stuff, right? There's these kind of slightly pantomime conflicts taking place between the kind of identitarian left saying you have to acknowledge my gender and my right to have a dick and a vagina at the same time and all that crazy stuff. And then you have the kind of the right-wing elements on the very online right, who I don't particularly have a problem with. Some of them are interesting people, and they're kind of having this fight all day long on the internet every day. But in society more broadly, something more important is happening, which is that ordinary people in their millions are looking at all this stuff. They're reading all this stuff. They're looking at Saturday Night Live and seeing the blind contempt that these lovies and these cultural figures have for them. They're looking at things that Biden says. They're looking at the border and this idea that who cares if the border is porous? Who cares if it's open? It doesn't matter. They're looking at all this stuff and they're saying, this is irrational. This is dangerous. The establishment poses as the adults in the room, but actually they're insane. They have insane views on biology, on borders, on national security, on climate, on everything else, and on the economy. They're looking at all this and saying, the voice of reason has to come back in. And they see themselves as the voice of reason. And I think they're right to see themselves as the voice of reason. And it's like we had this movement in Britain in the 1840s called the Chartists. And this was a movement for the right of men to vote, because working class men at that point couldn't vote. And it was a brilliant movement for the right of working class men to vote. And they had this weekly newspaper. And there's one article in that newspaper, which is very well known, where they said, you know, the priests and the academics and the rulers of society, they pose as experts. But actually, the ordinary man in the street, the ordinary woman in the street, the person with a normal job is far more of an expert than they are, because he lives in society in a way that they don't. He sees the problems in society in a way that they, in their rarefied circles, don't. So ordinary people have a keener understanding, I think, of the problems afflicting their communities, the problems afflicting their societies, and the problems afflicting their young people. And I think what's happened over the past 10 years with the populist revolts is an effort by those people to say, we are going to restore an element of reason, we're going to restore an element of fairness in politics, and we're going to try and clip the wings of this cranky establishment that's been ruling over us for the past 3 or 4 decades. That's a wonderful moment, I think, in our political life.
It is, and aliens might land too. There's a lot going on. And there's also
Aliens might land too. That's true. There is a lot going on. I love the face that I just caught him in. I love that I just caught him in that face. We're gonna keep that face. That's perfect. That should be the logo. JRE. But the true experts are you. I've talked about this before. If you've been an avid watcher of the show, I have gone into rants where I talk about there's probably a guy who's an electrician just working every day who would be a better president than what is current. And that a lot of the positions, almost all the positions in government should be taken by people who are regular people who have to serve for a certain amount of time, short time, and then go back into the real world. And I think I brought this up even just a few weeks ago, or maybe a week ago. That would ensure that the divide between the government and the people wouldn't get so far. Because right now it's drastically far. The people who are in the government are wildly rich. It's like they're just super elite without having to do things like create SpaceX or Microsoft or anything like that. They just step into these positions. They become these super elite people. They're worth $500,000, and then all of a sudden they're worth $100 million, and that's it. And they don't have to answer to anybody. And they claim they work for the people, but they never hear the people's voices. Never. Do you think the last time Nancy Pelosi was actually in front of a bunch of regular people who have to, keep a drawer full of bags so when they go to the grocery store, they don't have to get more bags? When the last time you think she was around somebody like that? Probably not. She's in her 80s. She's like 80 or something like that. Probably not. 50 years. 50 years since she's had to interact with just regular people. That's a really big problem. Like, how often do you think Barack Obama is around regular people? Not since that limo ride with that gentleman that Tucker Carlson was talking to. I couldn't even say it with a straight face, but you know what I mean. Like, how often do you think they're around regular people? They're not really. It would be great if regular people could fill these positions, and then like jury duty. Like, oh, hey, Clark, they say that you gotta be in Congress this week. It's like, oh my God. And then they know. Clark knows. I got to do the right thing when I'm in there, because when I go back, I have a business that I run. I cannot get outcasted by the community for the decisions I make. I have to do things that are in favor of the people because I have to be back with the people. This goes back to Brett Weinstein when he was talking with Joe Rogan, and they were talking about the disconnect between the elite and regular people. And Weinstein was talking about how the reason that they're like this is because they don't see themselves ever going back to regular society. They don't see themselves losing everything and having to work a regular job. They just don't see it. They know it's not possible. They know it'll never happen. So they never have to make decisions based on if they have to go back. I just feel like they should have to go back. I bet there's somebody watching who would do a better job in select whatever position in government. Maybe not general or, defense secretary, maybe not those type of positions, but you know what I mean? Like, there should be more regular people in those positions, or at least the people who are in these positions have to interact with the public more often, or have to live with the public. That would be great too. You have to have a house just in the middle of a regular suburb. You just have to be there. No security, none of that. Just be a good enough person that you don't need all those things. That's a thing. I don't know. That's just me. Insane views. I love that he said that about the elite. They do have insane views. And here's another thing. Tucker Carlson talks about this as well. He was talking about how you should actually go and listen to the government and then talk to your local government, see because you are the expert, your community, you guys know what you really need. Know what that is, what you guys really need, what you guys really want to see in someone who's an elected official of yours, and then see what they're actually focusing on. And more often than not, it's worlds away. Again, because of everything I just talked about, they're so disconnected. They never have to interact with people. You should really do that. Check it out. Check out your local government and see, like, what are the top 3 things that they think they need to deal with? And what are the top 3 things that we think need to be dealt with? And how are those things going to correlate? Right? Because if you really look into it, it's probably going to be like, well, we need we need some anti-racism, and we really need some people need to respect pronouns, and we got to figure that out. And it's just nonsense like that they're really worried about, because they're trying to virtue signal to every single base they possibly can. And in reality, most towns are like, well, we don't want to see a mass of immigrants taking over community centers and schools. We need the prices of food to be lowered. And you know what I mean? They're not worried about stuff like that. They're just worried about stuff that's going to benefit them the most, virtue signal for them the most. Ordinary people wake up based on extremes. That's really true. The people who are in the middle, the ordinary people, because the people that you see online are really the extremes. They're the massive extremes. I've talked about this before in terms of toxic masculinity and toxic femininity and stuff like that, where you have someone like Andrew Tate and you're like, well, that's not regular. And then, but you can also look at someone like Jordan Peterson and you go, well, that's not regular either. This guy's a psychologist. He's wildly smart. Like, that's not a regular person either. And then you look on the other side of masculinity and it's like Harry Styles with his fingernails painted and he's wearing a dress. And you're like, what is it? Like, both sides are really toxic. And you can say the same thing with women as well. And the ordinary people, the regular guys of the world, they have no representation. But when they see these extremes everywhere, I would hope, when they see them in social media, when they see them in the government, and they start to wake up, they start to go, oh, none of that matters. Like, that's not what I'm concerned about. I'm not concerned about that at all. Like, I'm concerned with the price of diapers. I want to understand why the mom and pop stores haven't gotten loans to open up again, because they were forced to close and none of them have bounced back. Where are they? What's going on with them? Do I get loans to start a business? I want to start a business eventually. What is this place going to look like when my kid's 18? I want to live in this community for that long. Oh, man. I get passionate about stuff like this. And then when they brought up Trump is rebellion. I love what he said, O'Neill, when he brought up we needed a blunt instrument. That I've been saying this for so long. I talk about in another video how Trump, his superpower is disrespect. That is what people needed. For the longest time, people didn't feel respected by politics, by politicians. They just didn't feel heard. They didn't feel respected. And then all of a sudden, it's like they have this guy who is literally the blunt instrument. He is blunt. He is outspoken. He's giving them nicknames. He's saying things to them. He's laying it out. He's saying you should be in jail. He's saying all the things that we want to say. Of course you're going to back him. He's for the people. Nobody wants to play nice anymore with Barack Obama in a beige suit. And he's like, hey, guys. He dances around every question and doesn't actually answer anything. Nobody wants that anymore. They want the blunt instrument that's going to get the point across. You guys disrespect us for decades. Now we have somebody who's actually going to respect us, and he's actually going to come in to where you guys are in the places that we can't get into. And he's going to speak for us, and he's going to drain the swamp, and he's going to make you guys uncomfortable. That's what everybody wanted. That's why. So phrasing it as a blunt instrument is perfect. Like, Trump was the rebellion. He was the peaceful rebellion. Instead of having to handle it like the way you think when you hear the word rebellion, everybody was actually able to elect somebody who was actually able to provide that political rebellion that we all wanted. And then the last thing I'll touch on before I move on to the clips, when he talked about the current people in charge actually hating us, it sounds very harsh, but you do have to think of one thing. And I brought this up on my other channel as well. You do have to think of what the message sends when they do certain things. What message does it send to you when Texas seals up their border, gets it to only 10 people are crossing a day, and then the federal government says, open that up. Open it up for what? What do you want? 10,000 people? Open it up. No, take that down. Take that down. Move this. Open up the flow. What message is that sending to everybody? It's sending the message like, oh, we don't care. The border is one of the top 3 things you guys care about? Oh, we don't care. We want it. We want it flowing. Excuse me. Move. Let them through. Where do you want to go? New York? Okay. What message does it send when they do all these things and they just hold such disregard for you? What message does it send when you know the economy's not doing well because you're not doing well? And it's like your job hasn't changed or anything, and the price of things are going up. And then you see Biden's press secretary. She's like, this is the greatest president of our time. And inflation is just so far down. And you're like, what? Huh? Like, are you trying to gaslight me right now? I'm the one buying eggs. I can tell. But they're like, no, it's down. It's down. Trust me. And if it is a problem, it's Trump's fault. Okay. Like, what kind of message does that send? It sends a message where it's like they really don't care about what you think. It's interesting. All right, let's move on. I'm sorry I took so long with that, guys. If you're still with me, thank you so much. I love you guys. Let's get into this one. They're talking about the SAVE Act and what they plan to do in regards to immigration.
But among the problems that flows from this open border catastrophe is directly related to this threat to our election integrity. Why is that? You need to understand something really important about federal law. Since 1993, the National Voter Registration Act, we call it the Motor Voter Law, allows people to sign up to vote when they get a driver's license. If an individual only asserts or simply states that they are a citizen, they don't have to prove it. They can register that person to vote in a federal election. And you see, states are currently prohibited. Believe it or not, the states are prohibited from asking someone to prove that they're a citizen. The federal voter registration form just has a check-a-box, and if you do that, you're good. The states can't allow it. Well, we think that's a serious problem. And so what we're going to do is the House Republicans are introducing a bill that will require proof of citizenship to vote. It seems like common sense. I'm sure all of us would agree. We only want U.S. citizens to vote in U.S. elections. But there are some Democrats who don't want to do that. We believe that one of their designs, one of the reasons for this open border, which everybody asks all around the country, why would they do this? Why would they allow all this chaos? Why the violence? Because they want to turn these people into voters. Right now, the administration is encouraging illegals to go to their local welfare office to sign up for benefits. Well, guess what? When you go to a welfare office, they also ask you if you would like to register to vote. And so many people, we think, are going to do that. And you know what? The numbers are so high. There's so many millions of illegals in the country that if only 1 out of 100 voted, they would cast potentially hundreds of thousands of votes in the election. That could turn an election. This could be a tight election in our congressional races around the country. It could, if there are enough votes, affect the presidential election. And so that's why House Republicans are going to act. I'm going to announce to you today, here standing alongside President Trump, that we will do everything within our power to ensure that we do have free and fair elections in this country. If we don't have that in a constitutional republic, we have nothing. It's the basis of who we are as a nation, and we owe that to the American people.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And he's right. That could turn an election. So that's what they plan to do. I did not know that you just check a box and that it's kind of a don't ask, don't tell policy. That's very, very interesting. And how long has that been going on for? And how many elections, right or left, how many different people has that type of thing benefited? I don't know. Now, of course, with this being the most massive influx in a presidency in the past, I don't know, 10, 15 years, it's going to impact the most this time around. So, which was where that whole voter theory comes from, because how can you not think that when literally 8.5 million have come through? That's just what they know about. And then when you talk about getaways as well, you know, people tend to say, oh, 10, 12 million. No one knows for sure. And that's also a big problem as well. So, you know, when I see stuff like this with Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, which if I made a Matrix movie, I would make this guy one of the Smith agents for sure. He seems like it, you know. But when I see him doing stuff like this, I'm like, oh, Trump can trust this guy for sure. You know, but then when we get onto the whole topic of FISA and the fact that he's fighting for it, I'm like, I don't know. It's a little shaky. You know, President Trump has, you know, he's not perfect and he's made mistakes before in terms of who to trust. I just wonder if this gentleman is one of those guys. But I mean, so far I've seen a lot of good things from him. I know when he first got into office, the first statement he made was about Israel. A lot of people were upset about that because they're like, you just got elected to an American government position, and the first thing you're saying is about Israel, and that didn't make sense to a lot of, American citizens because it kind of doesn't make sense. You can kind of talk about that after, but you should be like, thank you, America, American people. Like, you should kind of focus on, you got to read the room a little bit. Just saying. Anyways, let's get on to it. This is going to be the next one where they're touching on Ukraine a little bit, the pro-life movement a little bit, and FISA, and whether or not Trump stands with the Speaker of the House. Let's get into it.
Or do you stand behind Speaker's office?
We're getting along very well with the Speaker, and I get along very well with Marjorie. We have a Speaker. He was voted in, and it was a complicated process, and I think it's not an easy situation for any Speaker. I think he's doing a very good job. He's doing about as good as you're going to do, and I'm sure that Marjorie understands that. She's a very good friend of mine, and I know she has a lot of respect for the Speaker.
And would you support a Ukrainian aid bill if the Speaker was to move forward with it?
We're looking at it right now, and they're talking about it, and we're thinking about making it in the form of a loan instead of just a gift. We keep handing out gifts of billions and billions of dollars, and we'll take a look at it. But much more importantly to me is the fact that Europe has to step up and they have to give money. They have to equalize. If they don't equalize, I'm very upset about it because they're affected much more than we are. The Ukraine situation would have never happened if I was president. Would have never, ever happened. And everybody says that, including Democrats, that it happened is such an outrage. Millions of people are dead right now, both sides. Millions of people are dead. Cities are blown to ashes. You'll never rebuild those cities. That's certainly not like they were, so beautiful. And this is something should have never happened. October 7th should have never happened in Israel. Should have never happened. What happened there was outrageous. Iran was broke when I was president. People weren't buying oil from Iran. They weren't allowed to. If they were going to buy oil from Iran, then they weren't going to do any business in the U.S. And I said it to China. I said it to everybody. They weren't doing business. They were broke. They didn't have money for Hamas. They didn't have money for Hezbollah. It would have never happened. October 7th would have never happened. It did happen, and now it's a disaster, and it's only getting worse. So it's very sad. No, I stand with the Speaker. We've had a very good relationship.
Mr. President, while you were in office, you said that you would sign a federal abortion ban if Congress sent it to your desk. Why should Americans trust your word that you would not do it now if you were reelected?
Because we don't need it any longer, because we broke Roe v. Wade, and we did something that nobody thought was possible. We gave it back to the states, and the states are working very brilliantly, in some cases conservative, in some cases not conservative, but they're working, and it's working the way it's supposed to. Every legal scholar, real legal scholar, wanted to have it go back to the states, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, and we were able to do that. You know, what we did was give it back to the states, and now the states are working their way through it. And you're having some very, very beautiful harmony, to be honest with you. You have some cases like Arizona that went back to like 1864 or something like that, and a judge made a ruling, but that's going to be changed by government. They're going to be changing that. I disagree with that. Excuse me, please.
Just a follow-up. Over the last few decades, Mr. President, you have both considered yourself pro-choice and pro-life. Which one is it?
Well, you know exactly which one it is. And when I was in New York and when I was a Democrat also, just like Ronald Reagan. You know, Ronald Reagan was a Democrat. We sort of followed a very similar path. But if you look at what we've done with Roe v. Wade, we did something that everyone said couldn't be done, and we got it done. And I give great credit to the Supreme Court and the justices for having the courage to do it. What they did is very simply give it back to the state. And I'll tell you, the Democrats are the radicals on this because they're willing to have abortions in the 7th, 8th, 9th month. They're even willing, and you can call it what you want, but you go back to the governor of Virginia, the previous governor of Virginia, the Democrat governor of Virginia, where he talked about execution of a baby after birth. And you can say what you want, but that's extreme and that's radical, and nobody should have that, and it has to be ended. Please, go ahead. Go Go ahead, please.
Thank you, sir. Mr. President, do you think the motion to vacate rules should be finally changed, or do you think that it's just creating chaos right now?
Well, it's unfortunate that people bring it up because right now we have much bigger problems. The country is we're a nation in decline. We're a declining nation. We have tremendous inflation. The inflation's coming back at levels that nobody thought they really would have. If you look at the categories of inflation, they have the worst categories. Many categories are not included, and if you included that, your inflation number would be substantially higher than it is now, and it's already at records. So inflation is back, and a lot of bad things are happening in our country, but that's the least of it. You've got Russia you could end up in a world war between Russia, Ukraine, and all of the chaos, and that's something should have never happened. It would have never happened. What's going on with Israel, October 7th, and what's going on with Israel could end up in a world war. We have a president that can't put two sentences together. We have a president that can't find the stairs off a stage. We have a president that doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and we could end up in a world war. You know, we have just a little bit less than 7 months before November 5th. But that's an eternity when people are incompetent. Go ahead, please.
Do you support the House's FISA bill that was passed this morning?
Which one?
The FISA bill. And did you talk to anyone?
Well, I'm not a big fan of FISA. I looked at it and I studied it, and I know it probably better than anybody. You know, they spied on my campaign. You do know that, right? And they did lots of other bad things. I'm not a big fan of FISA, but I told everybody, I said, do what you want. They put a lot of checks and balances on, and I guess it's down to 2 years now, so that it would come due in the early part of my administration on the basis that we live up to the polls, because all the polls, we just had another one come out, we're leading.
So, what is this FISA? Now, if I had to just break it down for what your main concern should be about it, well, first off, they spied on Trump's campaign, and he sounded like a lunatic when he first started saying that, and then it turned out he was right, and they actually were. Now, they also did it to Tucker Carlson. Now, when Tucker Carlson talks about his signal getting hacked, and they knew that he was talking about interviewing Putin, that was that act at work. So he was an American citizen. He is talking to a foreign entity that they could deem a national threat of sorts. And because of that, they're able to listen or, get access to any messages that he has between him and that entity. Now, the thing is that what a lot of people are talking about now in regards to FISA is the fact that they could possibly spy on American people without having to get a warrant. At some point, you should have to have a warrant. There should be reasonable cause for you to be getting listened to on your text messages and your phone and your Instagram messages and whatever. There should be some kind of reasonable cause. There should be a warrant that you have to get. Because once you get that warrant, you've said, okay, we see this is a reasonable cause. We want access to this person's ABC. They don't have to do that. They can just decide that you're whatever. We're going to listen to your stuff. Let's see what's going on with this person and that person. Point is that could be abused. They could do that to millions of Americans. And that is why Tucker Carlson, Trump, kind of having this odd take on it. He's kind of like, you do what you want, but he knows the bad side of it because he has received the bad end of it, being spied on himself. Again, it brings up the question, can he trust Speaker of the House, Representative Michael Johnson? Because this gentleman is fighting for that to be a thing. You would think you want to do something that's in the people's benefit, and this doesn't seem like it is. A lot of people, even in the comments, one person is saying this is indefensible. If the government wants to investigate Americans, they need to get a warrant. Someone else said they clearly know something here. They clearly know something that we don't. Something is going on behind the scenes that they can't say. That could be true. So maybe with the influx of all these people who have come in, all of a sudden now they just need to be able to just listen to certain people. They just need to be able to do it because there's so many foreign entities inside America right now. That's also a take. I don't really know how I feel about it. I mean, There's always something that we don't know going on behind the scenes. Still think you should probably have to get a warrant. Maybe how long could it possibly take? Would having to get a warrant put people in danger because you want to act fast when it comes to, the worst of the worst case scenarios taking off on American soil? But I don't know. It just makes me wonder, like, can he trust this guy? Now, to a lighter note, Trump was at Chick-fil-A.
That's good. We're not going to let him rig this election. We're not letting him rig
Stop
this
the
election.
steal!
So Trump was there. Black people came in a mob of people, a bunch of black people. This black woman was like, I gotta hug this guy. They love Trump. They love being around Trump. He bought everybody food, It's Chick-fil-A. So before nobody had the notion of, oh, this guy's buying black people chicken. Chick-fil-A is more of a Christian restaurant than it is a chicken restaurant. I guess it could be hand in hand. But Trump went there to meet people, and of course, if you're in a restaurant, you're gonna buy everybody food. He got everybody milkshakes and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a very cool thing to see happen. Obviously, security out the yin yang, probably as many security members as people who came to see Trump. Let's be honest, this guy is stacked when it comes to security. And now we got Benny Johnson talking with a gentleman about this whole situation right here. And this gentleman right here, he refers to President Trump as the first black president. Listen to this.
Jack, we're thrilled that you can be on the program. We really appreciate it. And we couldn't think of a better person to sort of sound off on this current moment, because it's really fascinating to watch the differences between these two men. And it's amazing to see the meltdown when Donald Trump goes into a Chick-fil-A. I presume you've seen that news. What do you make of it?
Man, don't forget, Benny, I was the one that said Donald Trump is the first black president, and they went crazy. And I'll say it again on your show. Donald J. Trump is the first black president, and that's why these black people reacted the way that they do. And that's why you see people like Jimmy Kimmel, who is clearly fake. I mean, he goes into blackface. But you see someone like Jimmy Kimmel get so mad, man, because the truth and the fact of the matter is he doesn't realize it, but Donald Trump actually gave $10 billion in funding to HBCU. So yes, he can name a bunch of them. The reason why he can is I personally talked to him about it. And Donald Trump tells me the story over and over again about having all of the black presidents from HBCUs come into his office. And after the third year, he said, guys, why do you come in here every year and have to beg for money? You guys are prestigious university presidents. You should not have to beg for money. So you know what he did? He gave them long-term funding so that they didn't have to come back each and every year. So that $7 billion that Joe Biden is bragging about is just the extension of the Trump funds that he already allocated to HBCUs. You see, no one will tell you that because they don't know, and the left doesn't want you to hear it. That's the reason why I serve for President Donald J. Trump. And that's the reason I call him the first black president, because he actually passes policies that can uplift black people. He wants black people to have green in their pocket. He wants black men to be back in their homes. He doesn't want a black America that depends on the government and subsidies for everything. He wants people to actually work. And I'll tell you another thing, Benny, you go into one of his hotels or one of his businesses, it's full of black people working, from the managers on down. And you ask them, because I have and I do, you ask them how they feel about Donald Trump, and you hear stories of him paying for weddings and helping to bury people who have passed away. You hear about the genuine man of who he is, which is why I will continue to claim that Donald Trump is the
first black president. Now, obviously, you have to be clear about this. This guy right here, he is obviously biased towards Trump. I mean, he is a black man, and Trump himself is a black man as well. So he's gonna, kidding, of course. But that was a quick Trump breakdown of things going on. I'd love to know if you guys think that he can trust Mike Johnson. I've seen some good things from him. I've seen some questionable things. Not sure what to think about this FISA thing, because, is it going to impact Trump again? It's already impacted them once. Is it going to impact them again? Let me know what you guys think of it. The Chick-fil-A visit, what this gentleman had to say, first black president, and everything that you heard on Rogan that Brendan O'Neill went through. Now, the Brendan O'Neill episode, I got a couple more clips I'm going to show you guys in different episodes from that, but it's basically just half the episode is gold. The first half of the episode's gold. The second half of the episode is literally all they do is debate Israel and Hamas. That's it. So for me, after hearing this so much and knowing that debates don't really push that situation in either direction, I feel like it was a missed opportunity to really get into that man's brain, because Brendan O'Neill, he seems very, very smart. He's very in tune to what woke culture is doing to the world. He's seeing it in the UK. He's seeing it in America. He has a great perspective on it. So not to say that they're wasting their time, but I kind of am saying that. 50 minutes on a Israel-Hamas debate, kind of a waste of time in my opinion. Although it was an interesting debate, they did bring up some points that you don't get to hear too often. Joe was on the side of Palestine and the innocent people. Brendan was on the side of Israel, and they were just butting heads the whole time. Started talking in circles a little bit. I don't even know if I'm going to do an episode on that. It was, again, I'm getting a little tired of it. Would love to know what he thought about the border more than what's going on there. That's just me. Anyways, guys, like, subscribe, share, and other than that, I'm out.